Danes smo tukaj z umetnico Noro Turato. Včeraj smo zvečer odprli tudi njeno razstavo Eto ti nam, eno njenih večjih samostojnih predstavitev do sedaj. In sicer gre za umetnico, ki dober del svoje prakse temelji na performansu, vendar pač usporedno razvija oziroma gradi neko vizualno prakso. Nenazadnje je tudi povezano tudi z njenim izobraževalnim ozadjem. Nenazadnje je izobraževana kot grafična dizajnerka, vendar pač tudi njen prestop v vizualno umetnost nekako ni bil samoumeven, ampak so to vse točke, ki se jih bomo dotaknili v samem pogovoru. Tisto, kar je pomembno za njeno prakso, je izhajanje iz jezika. Jezik je tudi neki material in medij tega, kar počne. Pač gre za neko jezikovno pastiširanje, kjer črpa iz izredno raznorodnih virov različne jezikovne fragmente, ki jih nekako združuje v neke nove kreacije, v pastiše, ki pa sicer nimajo nekega pomena, ki bi ga intencionalni govorec pač hotel predati naprej, vendar pač se mi zdi, da skozi nje spregovarja nekaj popolnoma drugega. No, ta short intro je bil samo v slovenščini, cel pogovor bo pač potekal v angleščini, kot sem rekel, pač tudi to, da v svoji praksi uporablja skoraj izključno angleščino in pač, ki se tudi ne prevaja, pač izhaja iz določene taktike oziroma strategije njenega dela, ki se bomo tudi naprej v pogovoru dotaknili. So, try to focus. I gave a little intro in Slovene about your work. So just to continue straight on to the question, could you tell us something more about the process of your work? How you're concocting and putting together your performances, your performance work? How do you collect the fragments you use? Are you intentionally looking for something in particular sometimes, or they're just random linguistic ready-mades that just stay with you?
Well, I just basically kind of live my life. I have on my phone, and I read a lot. I have like a couple of apps that I use a lot, like Kindle, Twitter, different news channels. I have so much in subscriptions. It's ridiculous. I should start like budgeting my subscriptions. And then I just like kind of go through stuff, and depending on how where I am at the time, I live stuff in mostly kind of relatable things, or somehow things that I feel that are interesting in some way or another. Like that they are like, I think I'm kind of looking into the world and seeing what could be like very obvious, but still very interesting in multiple ways, in different, you know, like that can be taken out of the context and looked in a more broad sense.
And what are the contexts you usually?
Well, I mean, like it's just books, magazines, scientific literature, Twitter, chats with friends that I have, also conversations of friends, movies, scripts. It's just from all over the place, really. Like it's really trying to kind of also I'm all the time trying to diversify also where it comes from all. So it's not always like kind of narrowing down to one place, but it's kind of opening up to different places. And also, of course, with algorithms, which is kind of makes it extra hard because everything is kind of tailored to get you more of what you want, you know. So kind of breaking out of that bubble, it's I think maybe the most challenging part of like kind of trying to consume content consciously.
That was my next question, basically, because the exhibition and your exhibitions and your performances like read like some kind of a linguistic landscape of the digital age, but also they're more of a personal portrait. So how do you keep it fresh?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's really, I mean, that's kind of like the thing is that, I mean, luckily you change, you know. So you also like you're not the same person 6 months ago, so like, and you're not interested in same things, and more you consume, more you go somewhere else, so it's kind of all leads somewhere. So so in a way, I mean, it's unescapable, the subjectivity of like lifting something that is relatable, and like, you know, something that you lived will be different than what I think, and it's like, and that's taken, that's for granted, so that I can't avoid. I mean, other thing would be, I don't know, build an AI that would collect for me. But even AI would get subjective, you know,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
of its own. Because you know, you feed the algorithm something, and then it
course.
poops you out what you wanted, what you fed them. So him or whatever they. So it's like so it's impossible to break out of that. Like you can't. I mean, you can try. And you can like try to go like deep in Reddit, and that helps. You know, like that's easy, and try to get exposed to different stuff than what you would get exposed otherwise. You know, that other what and be maybe aware of what's being shown to you,
Right.
and go further than that point. You know, so kind of trying to. But it also can feel dangerous, you know, like especially like you know going to a bit more like kind of edgy places, or you know internet is full of dark holes, and like going visiting those holes can also feel a bit petrifying, because you like kind of there's always this fear of getting like radicalized or getting like in some way seduced into like different truth that what you believe is a truth. Like yeah, I was always using Reddit a bit, and I would always get there through Google. I was never really like kind of on Reddit, like following subreddits and scrolling through feeds. It was always more that I would end up on Reddit. But then a couple of months ago, I kind of decided to also just like start doing Reddit a bit more consciously and kind of follow a few accounts. And then friend showed me like he's like an avid Reddit user, and he showed me like, yeah, you should follow this account, you should follow that subreddit, you should follow that subreddit. And then we were like going through that, and he was like, but wait, this subreddit, I mean, it's good, but hey, be careful. And then it's just like, you know, like there's this idea that you have to be careful on some Twitters, that, you know, like they say like Twitter and Reddit, they're dangerous, Instagram is stupid, you know, like, and it's a bit like, and it's really like that, like, you know, like once you like kind of go let free and you go break out of the algorithms on Twitter and Reddit, you can really start feeling the scary shit. Like you can start to get exposed to some really content that is like almost, and I can feel it lately also, especially with like election in the US coming up, you know, like it's really like it's so easily to manipulate. Yeah. And it's freaky in a way, because you know you're human. And like, you know, there's like some meme that it's really funny, but then if you think about it a bit deeper, it's like it could also be like a total propaganda, you know, like, right. So it's really, and then you get sucked into it, and then you don't know anymore what's the truth, because it's funny, you get it, but at the same time, it's not necessarily a greatest thing to think, you know, so it's like a bit like, so those are the kind of the weird things about the internet. Like you can do a lot with people on internet, it's crazy, and you know, I think somebody said, I don't know who said that, but like, you know, if you can influence 1 billion people to go 1% in one direction, that's a lot, you know? True. And that's what social media does. And it's, you can like kind of just a little bit steer, and it's steered a lot, you know, in the long run. So right. That's kind of the thing. Yeah.
Well, you're basically dealing with the deflation of meaning in the era where we're saturated with info, where meaning is such a surplus that we cannot take anymore. We just cannot differentiate. So, but on the other hand, your performances are so powerful, but they kind of reinstated this belief in the power of language. Well, where do you see the power of language in the era of the deflation of meaning is?
Yeah, I mean, like it's even more powerful, you know. Like it's right. Like if we had like if we were so into information, and now obviously we got misinformation, because it's like a logical extension of being fascinated by information and being like fed information. Then of course there's going to be like a next step, which is misinformation, but it's all basically kind of, it's still, even though it's misinformation, even though it's not its interpretations, even though it's like kind of like a group of facts that don't together necessarily have a meaning, it's like it's still confirming the power of language, right. Even though it's not communicating necessarily straight. So it's not you could argue it's even more powerful in a way, because it does like something else than what language is supposed to do.
And I think
so. It's like,
sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a very good point, and that's a very good point that your visual practice makes. You know, you almost treat a language as more of a sensory kind of stimulus than meaning. And also get this opting for the language of advertising, which is just kind of visualizing a language.
Yeah.
So I was also wondering about this insistence on form of language rather than meaning in your work, because in the performance there's the voice that dominates over meaning, and in your kind of visual practice it's just this visual stimuli that dominate over meaning.
Well, I think, like, you know, if you would do what I do in like 80s, it would be very, very referential to advertising, or to, like, you know, like it would be about mass consumption, advertising, product placing, you know, just like kind of very like the century of self type of Adam Curtis type of moment. That would be. But now, doing this, it's also really interesting how, like, you know, on Instagram, you had, like, now that it was this whole like with the Black Lives Matter, I was seeing a lot of political activism being articulated on Instagram to like memes, or to, like, you know, like you would have this like kind of slide, and you know, you can on Instagram you can post 10 images, and then they would post like 10 images explaining how to talk about this. Next slide. Next slide. It's like kind of like activism and like some sort of like a social justice ideology is being communicated through a very, very kind of corporate PowerPoint advertising aesthetics. So it's not about advertising anymore in a way, because this advertising leaked everywhere, that like it went through, like it leaked into every aspect of what we do, that it has almost lost connection to advertising, but it's more of like a tool that people use to communicate.
Right.
And I think we've never like seen so many images that are, like they kind of co-opted aesthetics and tools from advertising that are being used for something else that is not necessarily advertising, you know, like social justice and misinformation and lobbying, you know, like, I mean, on Instagram, also this thing with apologies is that, like, when celebrities write apology in a notepad on iPhone, and then they take a screenshot and then they post that, so that became an image, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, so apology, so something that few years ago, why would you take a screenshot of like an apology on a fucking, you know, but it signals a lot. It signals that the celebrity wrote it themselves on the phone, on their phone, and it was writing, and then it's kind of signaling a lot through that image. So this image became so loaded, but while actually probably some copywriter made a text, send it to somebody to copy paste it into Notepad and take a screenshot, and then this person sent it to PR person who posted it on Instagram of this person. You know what I mean? So it's like it stole aesthetics that plays with this familiarity of, and then this, and you have a lot of that more and more. I don't think we ever had so many language images circulating as much as we have now. You know, like before you had newspapers, and you know, now it's just like everybody does their like. Also this thing with like, you know, like I was seeing somewhere, some brands now started, like, you know, you have a lot of funny people on Twitter, and they post like a very funny sentence and good, and like, and then some brands like now take a screenshot of that, and then they kind of pay the person to use that screenshot on the billboard to promote the brand. You know, it's like so I saw this billboard which was just like a big screenshot of a Twitter sentence, of a Twitter post, and then like, and then this user who posted this shared it. Oh, this brand made a billboard out of my Twitter. It's like, what? You know, like, so it's this really it's kind of all these things like becoming aesthetics of themselves, and its language as an image is like, it's actually kind of whack. Like, we didn't see that before so much, you know.
You were trained as a graphic designer, and then you accidentally took up performance, and then you kind of developed this into a visual practice. So your curve was quite an unusual one.
Yeah, my curve is, I mean, also like I never had art education, like a kind of I mean, I was I was in art school, but I was studying graphic design, so it was not really. It was not comparable to education that my friends who were in fine art department got. Like this kind of more old, like I can't imagine, like some of my friends, they were like, since they were 18, they were like, I'm gonna be an artist. I'm gonna go to art school. And then from the beginning on, they had studio visits. They had like, you know, what is your practice about? And they're so, like, I never had that moment where I kind of had to sit down with someone and think about what I'm up to. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, as a teenager, I was making music. Then like I was like, okay, what do I do now? I was fucking bored. because I come from a small town and it was just very boring and I didn't have many friends. And then like with the whole MySpace generation, I kind of started to actually have some friends, but they were all online. And then I was just like, okay, basically music was the first kind of opportunity for me to meet people who I kind of like clicked with. And then I was okay, but that must be that music is the answer then, if this is like the first time that I'm meeting people that I can relate to. And then of course, and then I was thinking, okay, but you know, like you have to study something, you need to like, you should have you can't just like have a high school education. And then I was, okay, let's study graphic design because that's obviously kind of something that I can use for my music thing. And then I started studying graphic design, and then I was just kind of got into graphic design and I forgot about this whole music thing. And to be honest, I was at one point, I sold all my equipment and I was just so done with music. It's just so, it felt at the time, maybe now it's different, but back at the time, like 2009, 2010, it was very like pitchfork Canadian guys type of thing, you know, which I really didn't like. Like, you know, it's just like kind of Calgary band, you know, so it's like, it felt very, very bro Canadian type of thing, you know, so I really didn't relate to that. And I felt all my references in music were like kind of like somehow, all the things I liked in music from like 90s and were also same references that these Canadian guys had. And then it was kind of like merging and I really didn't like that. So I've decided like I felt like I couldn't do anything interesting with music. So I just kind of gave up and really consciously gave up. And just kind of like, I'm gonna be a graphic designer and I'm gonna get into typography. I'm gonna be a very good cultural graphic designer, you know. And also, I mean, when you're studying at Rietveld Academy, you're taught by people who are kind of like this generation of like 90s cultural graphic designers who actually were like witnessing like a crazy boom where there was like a lot of money in institutions. There was like kind of this whole like, you know, I mean, 90s were very peculiar in that sense that there was this like kind of, So basically they came from this idea that you can make money like this, you can live like this. This is the truth, you know? You just work for a good museum, you make like a poster, logo, identity, you work for a good gallery, you work for good bookshops, but today that's not possible. Like, I mean, there's so many graphic designers, institutions are struggling. Like, I don't know how these people, but we were all kind of taught that this is the answer. You know, you can have like a very, very bulletproof, morally, culturally interesting graphic design studio. And there's maybe like a couple of them in the world. You know what I mean? Like that they're still doing it. And but I kind of believe that truth. And then somehow, but I couldn't. And, you know, when I was making music, I never really liked writing lyrics, so I was always kind of lifting it from books. So basically, I mean, when I was 14, I already started doing what I'm doing now, is like kind of taking language from places. I didn't even understand some of the things I took, you know, like I would take some sentences from some books I never read, and I would be like, that's cool. It was completely just like aesthetic, vocal, kind of how it sounded type of thing. And then I was like, I kept collecting that language just like the way we all collect stuff in notebooks and stuff. And then at one point during my graduation year, somebody told me to like just read it, and I kind of read it and it sounded good, and then I made a video out of it. And it was like kind of video similar to the one that is in the show. And then during graduation, this video was, I mean, people liked it, and then somebody asked me like, hey, why don't you perform this? And then I performed it. And then after I performed it, people asked me more and more to perform it. So it's, and at the same time, I was working in advertising, so I was just doing this as like a side job, you know, like not even job. It's like I was just basically doing that for free, for like, you know, it was just kind of a fun thing to do. It never was. I never really thought of it as like any kind of career thing. I didn't know it would be possible even.
Right.
But then like more and more went on. More people liked it, but it's still like, you know, like I was just like kind of performing. It kind of art world picked it up first. And yeah, somehow I ended up in the art world because those were the people I was surrounded with, and those are the people that I was performing for, and then kind of like went in there, you know. Maybe, you know, if I was like doing that in like a theater school and surrounded by theater people, maybe I would wind up somewhere else, you know. Like it's not like maybe I would wind up in a theater. So it's like so it's a bit like also a bit like who you're surrounded with and where you go because of who you're surrounded with, and it's not really that you make decisions, really. You know, it's not.
Then what motivated then the development of the practicing?
Yeah, exactly. So basically,
training?
And then and I just like found myself for like a year and a half, 2 years, just really performing. Everybody loved it, but I just it was this time like when performance became kind of hot and everybody were looking for like some way to spice up their opening and to like make the opening fun. And then like you would have like a bunch of like, especially in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam is like the gallery scene is just so fucking, I mean, it's all guys and they're all like making ceramics and they'll hang shit on their walls and it's just so fucking boring. And then I would perform at the opening, just like a bit like bring her, like I really felt like a clown a bit, like, it was cool what I was doing, but I really, at the end, I was really just like an extra thing to have something extra at the opening, and it really started to bug me because I really felt like a total clown and I felt like, why am I not like hanging on walls, like. And also I got more and more angry because like a lot of people told me, oh, yeah, but it's good, your practice is very ephemeral, you should keep it ephemeral. As if ephemeral is better than shit hanging on walls. Like, as if there's this like superior, just because it's not, it's a material, like, so I felt this huge hypocrisy and huge kind of like pressure to keep it immaterial, continue to be clown, inaugurate openings where the dudes are still hanging their material shit up, like, so, but I'm like, I'm having my integrity, and I found it such a bullshit argument. So I was just like out of spite, I really came out of spite because I was like, okay, wait, I have 6 years of graphic design education, like I can probably do this better shit than you can, so I'm just gonna hang some stuff on the walls, like, and it was really came out of like complete like anger. It really came from just like really like, and that's maybe why also the language, it was so bold, because I was just so angry. I just wanted to like, fuck off, like let me so it came from that really. And then funny thing is that also picked up. So then it was fine, so and the funny thing is that it's not like one thing is more true than the other, or one thing is better than other, or one thing is superior to other, or more. They're both kind of supplementing each other in some way or another, and kind of like saying that like ephemeral practice is more valuable than a material one. It's also a bit of like kind of salon communism shit,
right.
To say, So it's like, who says that? Like,
but you often perform at the exhibition itself. You're kind of using it a bit as a prop or maybe as a script, and also it kind of stays as an archive of the performance as well. So how do you see the relation between the exhibition and the performance?
Yeah, I mean, like lately I've been trying to like kind of divorce it a little bit, because it's also a bit like, I don't know, it's just a bit like, I feel like everything I've done so far, it's always been like, it's like not like I know what I do, like I just do it and then I have some ideas of what sucks and what is good, and then
well, you're very articulate, so I think
no,
you
but
have a good idea.
The thing is that like I think we're just like today, you graduate from bachelor, your show gets online, you're online from like the moment you poop out any crap you had in you, and then everybody knows what you did, and you can't escape it ever again. Nobody allows you to like make a mistake, because you saw what's on Contemporary Art Daily, you see on Instagram what other people are doing, and you know how good art is supposed to look like, and then what you do, like it's so fucking, it's really decapitating, like you have to make a good, it's just crazy, like, I mean, like, I would like, I don't know, if I was in charge, I would forbid from graduation shows being documented, you know what I mean, and put online. It's like you're stuck immediately. They just like catch you, you know.
But even your performances.
Anyway, what I wanted to say is that every show I really felt like I really wanted to fight that. Like I wanted to try things out with each show and be allowed to fail, because I really think that I should be allowed to fail. I should be allowed to like do a shitty, like, so if each show has like if I make one good step in each show that brings me somewhere further, and I make one shitty thing, that's a win for me, because I tried. And I think that's how we should really fight for that as artists, because otherwise we're just like really stuck being like, doing what was already up on internet, what we saw before.
I just want to add, when you were commenting on banning the documentation of exhibitions online.
That's radical, but like, it was a joke.
Your performances are never documented, or they're not kind of used as documentation. The documentation of the performance is not the work. So you're quite adamant about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't like bug with that, like it's really, I mean, the thing is with the documentation of performances, there's like, I feel like there's two ways to go about it, but there's no nuance. Either you're like, like Tino Segal, nobody's allowed the camera, everybody drops off their phone at the fucking entrance, like, and then comes in, no photos. That's also crazy. That's also a decision, And then the other thing is like, let's make a video work out of it, which is also crazy. Like, it's like, I think truth can be somewhere midway, as in you don't control it, you just do it, and if somebody makes a video, great, put it online, whatever. Like, it happened, you know? I can't control that. I'm not gonna be busy censoring people from taking videos. It's like, it's 2020, but I'm also not gonna be busy hiring a camera crew and like, you know, and being stressed about that, you know?
I just have another question. It just came to my mind. There were quite a few like avant-garde and neo-avant-garde practices that dealt with language and the exhaustion of language. For example, the whole tradition of visual poetry is such that it kind of underlines this formal moment. Are there any reference individual arts that you find intriguing, or are you in any way intrigued by the recent history of art or in visual art?
It's funny. I think it really reminds me of a conversation I had with a really dear friend Anna Janevski, who I work now on a MoMA thing, and we were talking about like how. I don't know, she was referring in one interview to one sentence that one curator wrote about like something about internet. And we just realized actually how a lot of people see a lot of internet in my work. And I kind of like, it's strange because okay, there's a lot of internet in it, everything is from internet, but it's not about internet, you know? Like as long as people talk, as long as people use language, as long as, I mean, this is like so in a way vintage, you know, language. A cappella, you know, so in a way we were talking about it, and then if you would compare, like, my work is so much closer to Trisha Brown, and than it is to like Jordan Wolfson, you know, and in a way, like, if my work was in 70s, or it would just be kind of similar, it would be just less internet, and you know, so basically, but I'm really fascinated to see how people try to fit it into this, because it is in a way for people very digital. It's like kind of like, you know, but I don't see it as like an internet thing, and so basically I'm kind of more connected to this like whole like Trisha Brown stuff than I am to like recent stuff, and I think that's a bit what I'm kind of thinking about. It's just that it's always this internet stuff, and I don't get it. You know, it's a bit, I already said it once, and it's just like a toilet, you know, it's great to go to toilet, it's great that you can flush it, it's great that you can, but I mean, if there was no toilet, people still poop somewhere, you know, it's not like you don't do it, so like, you have to do it, you fix it, but like, if there is internet, great, more stuff to work with, you know?
Your work is very precise, it's very crafty, so I was just wondering, how do you structure it visually? You know, for example, this shows all the framed Helveticas and stuff. What kind of drives you?
Well, I think it's also, I studied graphic design for 6 years. I worked in advertising. I also worked like for culture. I mean, there's some institutions where I had shows where I did posters before for like different shows. So I have this like, I mean, like in some strange way, other than the performance part, I do approach my career as like a graphic design studio. Like, and you know, like I'm kind of hijacking a bit of that method, is that I don't have a studio. I don't like hang out in my studio and like hang shit on walls and like think, you know? And so we make renders, we put stuff in It's really like kind of, in a way, there's like a kind of a corporate structure, which I really enjoy. So basically, I'm kind of doing it the way I was trained to do it in my education, which is like very, very design practice and very studio kind of make a render, try it in a render, export the file, print it out. You know, it's like there's no this kind of old school. I mean, I don't have a studio to this day. Like I work from a couch and from a computer. Like it's really, it really has nothing to do with what like kind of, I mean, luckily, it's funny because like when I was in basic year, because like in Rietveld Academy, I was 18, so of course they put me in a basic year first because, you know, young kid without a portfolio, put her there. And then I remember they really fucking hated me. They thought I was like too rational, nerdy, you know, like kind of Croatian Eastern European girl comes and is like trying to be very good, like nerd, you know. And then remember I was like at the like an end exam for the basic year. They told me like, yeah, please don't ever do art. You're too rational. You're too like this. You're too like that. You just really should go to graphic design. And I was always hearing that, and all these, and it's just like, and first time I was at Rijksacademy that I've kind of felt a bit like, okay, I can be artist also, because I always felt like I was not that person, you know. But it's funny because now all these people that they're nobodies and I'm doing better than they are. So like I guess I can be an artist they can't. Like it's like revenge of the nerds.
Okay, just maybe since this talk became very informal,
Yeah, I'm
maybe
sorry,
we should kind of include
Yeah.
the audience.
It's sorry
they have
getting
any
formal,
questions.
but I really don't like this like art talk shit. Like it's I'm
No, but
I
that's
can't
why
do
we're having
it.
this why we can
Like
coffee.
I can't do it. You should fight that stuff, really.
Let's just have coffee then and chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, questions, please. Oh, come on, Dai.
Well, go.
Just really, if I may, I just really agree with the point that also Vladi made, that although I wouldn't say that there is, the point that you made was the emphasis on the quantity of ideas in relation to the language that she uses. So, but I would structure it differently. I wouldn't say that there is a deflation of ideas.
Oh, I said of meaning, not of ideas.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Then I misheard you. I just really enjoy the fact that the performances themselves function, at least from my point of view, more as a structure than a lineage of meanings. So I don't really. I mean, I see the contents more as sources, as little parts within this enormous structure, and I really appreciate the speed and the performative aspect of the language, not so much the content, let's say.
Yeah, well, this is my exact
No, but I think
point.
there's also like I mean, if I had to like find something interesting about it, then I would say maybe it's also a bit like it takes like 6 months to collect all this language, and it's bits and pieces, and then I have to like, to get it to sound good, and for 25 minutes to kind of hold people, it's a lot of craft. It's like a lot of like old school theater stuff. It has nothing to do with like with conceptual idea. For me, it has to do a lot with just how it sounds, how it feels, how do people react to it. Is it funny? Is it dark? Is it this? Is it that? So it's like kind of. So it's a lot about kind of.
It's about effects.
It's about effects a lot, and
It's like the mechanisms of poetry in a way.
One point, once I have the content, so I've been gathering shit for 6 months, I sit down, it's not so much about the content anymore, but it becomes about something else. And I think also and then learning the text, and then like rehearsing the text, and then it's just so much work, and then it's like 25 minutes and it's done. So there's this like kind of like so much time gets squeezed into like a...
No, I imagine, because for instance, you mentioned a couple of times that Ladi, also referenced that works from the 70s and so on. So the thing that comes to mind is like Beckett and the Unnameable, how do you pronounce it? And so these works played a lot with linguistics, the effects, and the sort of deterioration of meaning within structures. But for instance, you build much more upon effects, like what I mentioned, and this is probably the big point that connects your practice to contemporary use of language and the way also perhaps advertising is structured, because it goes from convincing to effect. So it's not so much about what you say, but how it's sort of built around.
Well, it's about both, I think. I mean, also it's not like I can say I don't do gibberish in a way. So it's also a little bit about that. Like it's not, like it's not really only that. There's few layers of it, but there's that layer.
Yeah, but I think you made a good point when describing your work once as failed abstraction. I think
it's like failed abstraction.
Failed abstraction. I think this sums it up well.
Yeah, exactly, because you can't, if you want to make it into, I mean, it's language, it's words, it's female performing, it's like so many things, it's so fucking loaded. No matter how much like you abstract the fuck out of it, nothing can be abstracted, because it's like, even if you like do la 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 la, you're still there in front of this house, like dressed in something, it's still like loaded. So there's no like, you can't get rid of meaning. But you can try to get rid of like a strict ideas. I think an illustration. I think that's my biggest issue with art, is the one that I think that I don't know. That's my personal taste, but art that I like is the one that makes a point but doesn't illustrate the point. Like it kind of does it by itself. Does the point by itself, but it doesn't like come from a point and then like illustrates that point.
Yeah, materially.
Yeah, or in any way, you know, like.
But it's materially your work. You know, it's image, it's sound. That's material. It makes a point materially, I think.
Or in some way, but it's just like I don't like this idea that I'm gonna be like, ooh, I'm gonna do this and that's gonna make that kind of point.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like.
yeah. So this was one of my questions: is abstraction a way to avoid illustration?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Like it's just like yeah, exactly. Like I mean, illustrating is like probably the worst stuff ever. Like when I see somebody illustrate, I'm just like, and I don't mean illustrate as in the sense like make an idea come across very hard. Yeah, exactly. Like also that you have to read the fucking paper before you come in and then you have to understand it. Like it's also underestimating the audience. I think this whole press release culture is so fucked up because it's basically saying you can't figure it out yourself. Like you're stupid. You come in, you have to read this and then you can come in, then you can understand what I've been up to. Like it's like basically just insulting the audience totally. It's like, you know, it's just kind of insulting the audience and creating jobs for curators. Like, you know, like, sorry.
I know.
No, so they can play around with, you know, like, it's.
We can just put it in trash if you.
No, but I didn't mean it like that. No, I think there's like, I think there's space, a lot of good space and really important space for curators, but not the one that sometimes happens is that it kind of becomes like a. Yeah, and I mean also this illustration is reaching all times high now with also like kind of these biennials and these big massive group shows where like a curator comes with this big idea and then they like.
But that's almost passé now, I think.
No, but I mean I still see it. And then it's like, then they curate the fuck out of everything, get a bunch of works, and then it's about them. And then it's like about me, curator. I had this idea, you know, and then I got all the right works that fit this idea.
Is this a matter of competition? Because you kind of curate a lot of your work. Your visual practice is kind of curation of your work in a way.
Yeah. No, but I think I still benefit a lot from having a curator around. I need someone to like, you know, talk to, direct, and like, you know, but I cannot do this myself. I mean, I probably could do it, but it wouldn't be this way, and maybe it would be like, you know, there's like a certain level that you have to have people around because they make, if somebody's intelligent and really kind of conscious and knows you and like can make like, and can like in some way make comments just in conversation, that is a lot, you know. But this idea that somebody is gonna like put your work in the right context with 30 other people and make something else out of it, it's a bit like, oh, I mean, sure, do it, but yeah, like.
Is this why you haven't read my text?
Huh?
Is this why
no,
you
I
haven't
don't read
read
that.
my
No,
text?
I don't read that text that people
I'm
write
joking,
because
I'm
it's just like, I don't care. Sorry, you should not put this online, please don't.
Oh, I will. This is going to be the title.
It's gonna be like a
Go on.
No, it's actually like, I mean, sorry. You know what I mean. I mean, now I'm never gonna get invited to Biennial again.
Fingers crossed. Any other questions?
No. So good. Such a good day. Look at this. Oi. Beautiful. No more questions?
No. So.
No, that's it.
Well, any final thoughts? Any next steps?
Next steps? Yeah, a lockdown probably.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like.
Yeah.
We're finished. We're done. Now we go back to like. Now I don't know. Yeah, let's see how this. I think it's gonna be a very interesting time. I really don't know what's gonna happen with the art world and with institutions and with. It's gonna be hardcore. I think it's gonna be like. I think that's like, yeah, I don't know. Like I'm a bit suspicious about the times to come. Not in a sense that I'll suffer, but in a sense that it will just get more rotten than it is even. Like, in that sense, you know. Like, I mean, rarely the crisis brought, it brought some good things, but from a bigger perspective, it always brought a bigger divide between the rich and poor, and successful and unsuccessful, and like those who have it rolling and those who die, and that's really fucked up, you know. So I'm not excited to see that, because I also like, imagine graduating now, like, imagine graduating now online without any place to show anything. It's terrible. It's really, I really feel sorry for art students now. It's just like, whoa, you know. So I really hope that there will be some ways to like have a new generation of artists like also have opportunities and do stuff, and it's not all gonna be like, you know, it's really I'm really curious, but yeah, I hope not the scenario that I have in mind.
So this was Nora Turato, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.